What if Adrian Newey's most ambitious project is starting with a structural error that could compromise Aston Martin's entire season? Adrian Newey arrived in Bahrain with what was to be the flagship project of the new era of Aston Martin. A radical car, designed under a completely new regulation, accompanied by a Honda power unit also new in the technical cycle. It was the perfect setting to show that the team not only wanted to compete, but to lead. But after 3 days of testing, reality was much harsher than expected. From day one, the AMR26 did not convey solidity. It wasn't simply a matter of being far off on the timesheets, which is common in preseason, but rather the constant feeling that the car was not working as a coherent whole. The pace deficit was evident, but more worrying was the lack of fluidity in the work program. Runs were disrupted, mileage was poor, and the general impression was that the team was trying to understand structural issues before even looking for pure performance. The second day brought no clear improvement. If the first sowed doubts, the second set off internal alarms. The analysis by sectors and the comparisons with the reference cars began to show a gap that did not fit within the classic discourse of different programs. Lance Stroll tore up that script. He openly spoke of a difference of more than 4 seconds per lap with respect to the leaders. And that figure does not come from an isolated batch. It is born from technical meetings, incomplete simulations, and accumulated frustration after trying to find answers that did not come. In parallel, the car's behavior showed problems in multiple phases of the curve. There was not a single specific weakness. There was a perceived lack of traction at the start, instability under braking, and unpredictable aerodynamics that did not offer confidence. When a car fails on such different axles at the same time, the problem is usually deeper than a simple wrong setup. Everything pointed to integration difficulties between the aggressive chassis architecture, extreme packaging, and the new Honda power unit. The third day should serve to close the test with clearer sensations. However, it left an even more disturbing picture. There was no obvious linear progress. No solid simulation came along to change the narrative. There was no run that suggested the team was hiding performance. Fernando Alonso, more measured in his statements, hinted that there are seconds blocked due to reliability and correlation problems that prevent the true potential of the car from being explored. But even in his diplomatic tone, discomfort is perceived. The car does not respond naturally. It does not allow you to work with continuity. And that, in the preseason, is a critical sign. What makes these 3 days especially delicate is not only the times, but the fact that the pilots themselves have publicly expressed their concern. In Formula One, there is an implicit code of caution in February. Here that code was broken. And when it breaks so soon, it usually means that the level of internal frustration is higher than what is shown on camera. Bahrain was not simply a low-key test for Aston Martin. It was a start marked by a brutal deficit in pace, engine chassis aerodynamics integration problems, and a loss of confidence that, in a project led by Adrian Newey, weighs more than any stopwatch. The architecture designed by Adrian Newey is radical. It is not a conservative concept nor a simple evolution. It is an aggressive approach in packaging, mass distribution, and aerodynamic treatment, designed to fully exploit the new regulations. But that level of aggressiveness requires millimeter coordination with the Honda power unit, which also debuts under new technical conditions. And Bahrain has made it clear that that harmony is not working. When lack of traction, instability during braking, and unpredictable aerodynamic behavior are combined on the track, the problem is rarely isolated. It means that the car does not maintain a stable platform. It means that the aerodynamic flow is not being consistent when the pilot transfers weight when braking or when he demands power at the exit. And that connects directly to how the engine delivers energy, how it is thermally managed, and how all of this affects the overall balance. In these 3 days, Aston Martin failed to complete simulation programs with sufficient continuity to fully understand real performance. Interruptions, constant adjustments, and lack of mileage don't just affect the stopwatch, affect the correlation between factory and track data. And when a team loses correlation, it loses confidence in its development tools. That's more dangerous than losing a tenth. Lance Stroll's statements about the difference of more than 4 seconds not only talk about pace, they talk about technical disconnection. When a driver feels that the car does not respond in any axle, in traction, stability, or predictability, the implicit message is that the whole is not balanced. And balance in Formula One is the result of a perfect integration between aerodynamics, chassis, and power unit. Fernando Alonso, although more diplomatic, dropped a key idea. There are seconds blocked by reliability problems and lack of exploration of real potential. That suggests the team hasn't even been able to push the car to discover its limits. It's like trying to evaluate the peak performance of a machine that can't yet run without interruptions. And here appears the real challenge for Adrian Newey. His career is full of extreme concepts that at first seemed misunderstood but ended up dominating. However, in this case the variables are multiple and simultaneous. New regulations, new power unit, new internal architecture. It is not about optimizing a specific area, but rather about ensuring that the entire technical ecosystem functions as a single entity. Bahrain has shown that, for now, that ecosystem is not synchronized. The AMR 26 does not seem to hide pace. He seems to be searching for identity. And in Formula One, when a car is still trying to understand itself at the end of testing, the margin for reaction is dangerously reduced before the actual start of the season. 3 days do not define a season, but they can define a trend. And what Bahrain left for Aston Martin was not a simple lack of specific speed, it was a feeling of an incomplete project. AMR 26 did not emerge from the test with a clear identity. There was no simulation that hinted that the team was hiding cards. There was no long run that changed the perception. There was no moment when the car conveyed technical authority. What there was a visible deficit in pace, persistent integration problems, and perhaps most delicately, a public exposure of that concern by its own pilots. When Lance Stroll talks openly about being more than 4 seconds behind, he's breaking through typical preseason armor. When Fernando Alonso lets it slip that they have not been able to unlock the true potential due to interruptions and lack of reliability, he is pointing out that the problem is not simply aerodynamic or circumstantial. It is structural. Adrian Newey hasn't built a conventional car. It has opted for an aggressive architecture at a time when the regulations are changing and the power unit is also changing. This multiplies the possible points of friction. And Bahrain has shown that, for now, those frictions exist. The car not only needs development, needs understanding, needs correlation. It needs stability as a base platform before it can squeeze performance. The risk now is not only starting the championship behind. The risk is starting the season without a solid base on which to evolve. Because when a car is born with integration problems, each subsequent update depends on solving that root first. And the calendar doesn't wait. Aston Martin left Bahrain with more questions than certainties. AMR 26 was to mark the beginning of a new era under Newey's leadership. Instead, the 3 days of testing have raised an uncomfortable question. Has the concept been too radical for the technical moment that Formula One is experiencing? The season has not officially started yet. But if something was clear in Bahrain, it is that Aston Martin does not arrive as a silent contender. It arrives as a team in urgent technical reconstruction. And when urgency appears so early in a project, the internal pressure multiplies. The real test won't just be whether they can win tenths. It will be whether they can rebuild confidence in their own car before real competition amplifies each of these weaknesses. Bahrain was not simply a difficult test for Aston Martin. It was an early warning. The AMR 26 arrived as the symbol of a new technical era under the direction of Adrian Newey, with a radical architecture and a Honda power unit designed for the future of the regulation. But instead of showing a solid foundation on which to build performance, the 3 days revealed a car that still doesn't understand itself. Brutal pace deficit, clear integration problems between engine, chassis and aerodynamics, lack of consistent mileage and, above all, a loss of public confidence expressed by its own drivers. When in the preseason the protagonists talk about 4 seconds difference and seconds blocked by structural problems, we are not facing a simple adjustment phase. We are facing a project that needs to stabilize its fundamentals before even thinking about competing for leading positions. Formula One does not wait. The calendar moves forward, development accelerates and every week counts. If Aston Martin manages to understand and correct the root of its problems, this test will remain an initial setback in a concept that can still flourish. But if the integration between the Newey architecture and the Honda unit does not quickly find balance, the risk will not only be starting behind, it will be compromising the entire evolution of the season from its starting point. Bahrain did not sentence the year. But it did leave an open question that will mark the start of the championship. Can Aston Martin transform a radical project full of doubts into a real competitive platform before the pressure becomes unsustainable? Leave me in the comments what you think of all this.